had a great class focusing on how are we always supposed to be happy, because we want to always be happy and God wants us to always be happy, and God has given us the tools how. Find out what they are. So to continue the Purim spirit, I wanted to give over actually a talk of the Rebbe connected to, in a sense, the day after Purim, but not really. So I'm going to give you a little background to understand what we're talking about, and then we'll talk about it. And the idea is, just like Purim, very big theme is joy. So this is really a technique, an approach to always feel happy, no matter what's going on in your life. So to give you the backstory, there's Purim. The day after Purim is called Shushan Purim. Shushan Purim means literally the Purim in Shushan, because if you remember from the story, which you all heard twice last week, but it was in a foreign language, all the Jews of the world on one day, the 13th of Adar, are supposed to be killed. But they do have permission to defend themselves. And God made this incredible miracle. And instead of being slaughtered, we actually were able to kill out all those haters that were trying to kill us. 75,000 of them across the world. It happened on the 13th of Adar. And therefore, on the 14th of Adar was the day of celebration and the day of the great energy, the spiritual light of Purim that, as we said, will continue to shine even during the times of redemption. It was not true for the Jews of Shushan. Shushan was the capital city of this entire world empire. And in Shushan, since they had a little bit closer reach to the king, they said, we killed out 500 haters that tried to kill us, but there's still a lot more. We have one more day. And the king said, okay. So when the rest of world Jewry was celebrating and receiving the spiritual energy of Purim, the Jews of Shushan were still in battle on the 14th as well as the 13th, which means when did they celebrate and receive all this spiritual energy? On the 15th. So for every year, ever since, the 14th of Adar is Purim for the world, the day after the battle of the world, and the 15th is Purim for Shushan, the day after the Shushanites, the Jews of Shushan, finished their 2-day battle. But our sages extended this and said, we want to remember Israel. Here, all the Jews are in Persia, all over the world, and poor Israel is desolate. We want Israel to be part of the miracle as well. So therefore, we're enacting a decree. Purim, the 14th of Adar, the day after world Jewry is battling, and the day after is when they receive all the godly energy created by those battles and those miracles. For the Jews of Shushan, the day after a 2-day battle, they battle the 13th and the 14th. So on the 15th of Adar, the Jews of Shushan receive all the godly energy created by the battle and the miracles and the salvation. And because our sages wanted to include Israel, that she should not be forgotten in this amazing, unbelievable miracle, every city in Israel that was walled during the time of the miracle, they tag along with Shushan. So they have their celebration of Purim, not on the 14th like the rest of the world, but on the 15th like Shushan. Practically speaking, the only city we know for sure in Israel that was walled during the miracle is the city of Jerusalem. We know other ancient cities, like, for example, Tzfat is an ancient city, but we don't know if it was walled then. If you live in Chicago, you keep the first day. If you live almost everywhere else in the world, you keep Purim, the first day, the 14th. If you live in Jerusalem, you do not keep the 14th. You only keep the 15th. Shushan Purim, that's your Purim. And if you live in a city like Tzfat, you keep both days, the first day as your Purim and the second day from the doubt maybe the city was walled. Interestingly enough, the only city in the world that keeps Shushan Purim as the only day is Jerusalem, not Shushan, because we don't know exactly where ancient Shushan is or was. There are archaeologists that say they know, but we don't know. So therefore, truly, Shushan Purim is only kept today as the day, the only day of celebration in Jerusalem. The rest of the world on the 14th, Jerusalem on the 15th, and some cities like Tzfat, both. Now there's another dimension. Some years, 7 out of every 19 years is a leap year. In the Gregorian secular calendar, a leap year means 1 day added to February, once in every 4 years to complete the solar cycle. In the Jewish lunar calendar, 7 out of every 19 years, we add an entire month to keep the solar and the lunar calendar align. Every year we do so is called a leap year. We didn't add a day, we added a month. And which month do we add? We add the month of Adar. It's a great month for the Jewish people, so let's have 2 of them. We add the month of Adar. Instead of 30 days of joy, we have 60 days of joy. We celebrate the holiday of Purim, the 2nd Adar. In the 1st Adar, we mark the days of the 14th and 15th. The 14th of Adar 1, that if this wasn't a leap year, it would be Purim, but now it's 30 days away from Purim. And the day after, Shushan Purim of Adar 1, that if it wasn't a leap year, it would be Shushan Purim, but it's a leap year. So Shushan Purim is 30 days away. We have 4 days we're discussing. Ultimate top, over the top joy, Purim. Day after Purim, Shushan Purim, also a very special day. Very special day. In a leap year, the month before, the small Purim. If this was the month added, or not technically correct, it's sort of a debate which is the month added. But if this was the Purim in the 1st Adar and Shushan Purim in the 1st Adar, the small Shushan Purim in a leap year in the 1st Adar. Those are the 4 days we are discussing. The Lubavitcher Rebbe discusses which of these days have an obligation for joy. Well, obviously we know Purim and Shushan Purim. That's not the question. But let's talk about when there's that extra month. Small Purim and that small Shushan Purim. Are we supposed to rejoice then? I mean, like it's really nothing's going on besides it being a month away from Purim and Shushan Purim. So this is actually discussed in Jewish law. The Ramah, which stands for Moshe Isserles, who was born in 1520 in Krakow, a long time ago. He lived 52 years, but he accomplished a lot in his 52 years. He was the main codifier of Jewish law, Poland, Germany, for Ashkenazic Jewry. If you're from Ashkenazic descent, the Ramah was the main codifier for your ancestors of Jewish law. Are we supposed to celebrate that small Purim in that month we have a month before Purim, that additional 2-month Adar? Do we celebrate that small Purim? And he says, yes, somewhat. And then he adds a verse. This is a verse from Proverbs, from Mishlei, from King Solomon. The verse says, a good heart always parties. A good heart is always feasting. In Hebrew, tov lev mishtatam. Why did he add that verse? This is law. This isn't like scriptures. He doesn't need to use verses. He adds the verse to allude. Of course, Purim. Of course, Shushan Purim. Even that small Purim, I'm telling you, yes, rejoice. And I'm saying a good heart always feasts. A good heart always parties. You should always be in a joyous spirit. And therefore, it's the small Shushan Purim. Go for it. Rejoice. Do something extra. Have extra food. It's a good way to create easy happiness, right? Do something to mark the day. A good heart is always rejoicing. Make it a party whenever you can. Whenever there's an excuse, rejoice. The verse was, a good heart is always celebrating, is always rejoicing. What do you think this good heart alludes to? What do you think is the quality that would help a person always be joyous?
Optimism.
Optimism, yes. Optimism is a really important quality because we look at things and we say, they're good, or they're sure gonna be good. And that definitely keeps our spirits up. That definitely would be a good heart. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on what could be this good heart?
It's what you are teaching us to exercise this muscle of joy. Basically saying, if you are everything that in my life is good because it comes from God. Good is good, bad is bad. I'm staying on the right track. I'm doing good. I'm doing mitzvot. I'm not transgressing. Yeah, things are happening in my life, but if I'm staying on track, this is already a reason to be joyful.
Absolutely. That definitely, that general perspective, it's all God. It's all good. A lot of times things seem very unwired. Things like, what? God, but we say, no, it's all God. It's all good. And then we say it to ourselves another 57 times. And then we sort of breathe and keep moving and trust, and it's God and it's good. Which really does link, of course, to this idea what Ellen said of optimism, because that's that optimism, that's just that general positive perspective. It might not look good. It's good, and it's going to get even better. We're going to focus now on another road to joy. So what Rivka said, which is very much in line with what we've taught many times, is 100% accurate, and it is a very strong road to joy. And now we're going to introduce another road that maybe is simpler, doesn't take as deep spiritual muscles, but of course, there's some muscle stretching and flexing in this as well. In the Talmud, when we look at this verse, does it mean a good heart is always joyous? Hey, we all want to be always joyous. We all want to be always partying. So we all want to decode this good heart. So the Talmud says it's a broad mind. That's one understanding. Rashi, the classical commentator Rashi, who comments on all of Tanakh, on all of scriptures, in Mishle, in Proverbs, he decodes that word good heart as someone who rejoices in their life, someone who rejoices in the life they have, which again can speak to Ellen's idea of the optimist, or Rivka's idea on a more spiritual level of the person that says, this is all God, this is all good, someone who rejoices in their lot. So we have here two explanations, both legit, both Torah, both holy, of what does it mean, this good heart? A broad mind and someone who's rejoicing in their lot. Obviously, the two are interconnected. When you have a broad mind, then you rejoice in your portion, and then life is always great. Life's always a party. A lot of people, their mood depends on how they're treated. When everything is good, they're happy. If it doesn't seem so good, they could worry or sometimes worse. The Talmud is saying a good heart is always partying. A good heart is always celebrating. A good heart, a broad mind. If you have a broad mind, you'll be happy no matter what the situation. So we need to understand what this broad mind is. Now we've got from a good heart to a broad mind. What is this broad mind? What perspective is here that no matter what's going on, you will be happy? So to know what a broad mind is, we have to unpack the opposite, because we don't really see anywhere in Torah a definition of a broad mind, but we do see the opposite. We see a discussion on a small mind. So if you know what a small mind is, you can figure out what a broad mind, what we want is. We don't want the small mind. We do want the broad mind, but we're going to discuss the small mind to understand the broad mind. Where do we see this term small mind? So we actually see it in a prayer where it says the needs of your people, of your nation are very great and their minds are very small. So there's a link here. The needs of your people are very great. Why are the needs of your people very great? Because their minds are very small. One of the Chabad Rebbeim, the fourth Rebbe, the Rebbe Maharash, explains in the name of the first Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, that because we have small minds, that's why we have a lot of needs. If we had a broad mind, like the Talmud said, a good heart means a broad mind. If we had a broad mind, we wouldn't have so many needs. So if you have a broad mind, you don't have so many needs. You have a good heart. You don't feel you're lacking anything. All your needs are met. You're happy. You're celebrating. You're partying. So why does a small mind connect to a lot of needs? Basically, and this is the key point to understand, God gives us everything we need. But sometimes we are not satisfied. We want more. And we run after more. And you know what happens when you run after more? You don't get it, and you lose what you should be getting. It's like a double issue. God is saying, I'm giving you everything. Whatever you should have, I'm giving you. If you're chasing after other things, that means you're not appreciative of what I'm giving you, so forget it, so to speak. So I'll stop. You're not enjoying it. You don't think it's a good lot? All right, no problem. And then we don't get what we're running after, and we don't get our basic needs fulfilled as well. The parable given for this, so you can envision, if you had this really nice dress, looked great on you, got lots of compliments, and you have this weird thought in your head. You're like, everyone likes this a lot. I like it a lot. It looks really good. I feel really good in it. I like it so much, I want more of it. So I'm going to make it longer. So you get more material of the same fabric and you have the dress lengthened till it's to the floor. And now what happens is where you walk, you trip. You keep falling on that dress. So that dress that was really good when it was an appropriate length, now that you made it longer, it's not good anymore. And it's tripping you up. It actually is worse for you that you made it longer, not better. So what does that mean practically? That's an interesting parable for the concept. What does it mean practically? It means that when we are dissatisfied, when we look at what we have and say, not enough, my needs are not being met, we fall on our face. We don't get what we're wanting, and we don't even get what we were getting before. So why is this a small mind? It's a small mind because the reason why this person, maybe us, maybe me, is falling on his face, is thinking, I want, I need, I must have, comes back to being small-minded and not understanding your real worth. Meaning you think you deserve more than you do. And that's why you're running after more, because you think you should be getting it. When you have a broad mind, you look at things bigger, you put things in perspective, and you properly evaluate yourself. And then you realize, and this is a key point here, everything I'm getting is God's kindness. You don't run after more, which chases things away, because you're so grateful for what you're getting. You feel it's undeserved. So when you have a small mind, you feel you deserve more, and you want more, and you need more, and you run after more, and you lose what you have. When you have a broad mind, you look at yourself, and then you look at what life is giving you, what God is showering on you, and you feel, oh, wow, so grateful and so undeserved, such an undeserved recipient of all this kindness. And then it keeps flowing down. Another aspect of the small mind is that the physical world is very important to you. With a broad mind, it's less important. With a small mind, it's very important because like physicality is small, it's limited, it's finite. And small minds, small physical, finite reality, it's a match, it's a shidduch. So the smaller your mind, the more the physical world takes up a lot of space and you want it and need it and must have it. A broad mind thinks of spiritual realities, thinks of God's realities, and therefore shrinks the significance of the physical. And that's why it doesn't run after it. And that's why it is satisfied with what he or she has. So that's what was meant by that quote from prayer. The needs of your people are very great and their minds are very small. When your mind is very small, your needs are very great because you're not evaluating yourself properly. You feel dissatisfied with what you have, and the physical takes up a lot of significance in your life. So you want more and more of it. Our sages actually say, and they're not talking here about a bad person, they're talking about a human person. Whatever we have, we always want more. The sages say, if you have 100, you want 200. If you have 200, you want 400. You said, well, if I had 800, I'd be satisfied. That's just because you don't have 800. If you had 800, you'd need 1,600. That is the human nature. Can we change? Can we escape this? Yes, of course. Working on yourself. It's not impossible to be satisfied with what you have. But if you don't work on yourself, you're probably not satisfied with what you have because whatever we have, we always want more. Which means we're never going to reach this point of satisfaction, no matter how many millions a person could have. No, at that point, come on. Nope. If the sages are correct and the person hasn't worked on themselves, it doesn't make a difference how many millions. You need more, but not if you have a broad mind. If you have a broad mind, you're not ruled by all the physical things and stuff and accoutrements of this world. And therefore, you don't have a lot of need. You have a good heart, broad mind, good heart, and you're always partying. There are 3 points here that we want to unpack a little because I really wanted to make this real. Again, what Rivka said before is a very true road to joy, and we've discussed that many times. This is a different road, both of them, of course, God's roads, a different aspect, but not so different. But a different work on oneself that also really creates a lifetime of joy. And we deserve a lifetime of joy. And we all want a lifetime of joy. So that's why I want to let's go for this. So there are 3 points. 1, properly evaluate yourself. 2, you have to feel grateful for what you receive and feel it's like undeserved. And 3, the physical can't be so important. So I wanted to unpack each one. Of course, we know we're coming to the days of the redemption when we will all be so flooded with goodness and God's revealed love for us, that it will just be the nature. But now, shortly, as that time is coming up, we can already get in sync with it and feel so grateful and flooded with goodness now. So the first point was properly evaluate yourself, which means that honestly, we can look at ourselves and we know maybe more than anyone in the world, maybe our husband knows a little, but we know even more than anyone how hard we are working, because we're probably all working very hard. And we know how much we're achieving. We know what we're creating. And often, again, just being human, we don't see if we're doing anything wrong. Why? Well, because part of being a healthy human, so God willing, we're all healthy humans, is to have a lot of self-love. That's good. We want to have self-love. But a downside to self-love is self-love covers all flaws. So what we can acknowledge, what we know so strongly, the work we're doing, the good we're doing, what we're producing, how we're striving, how we're working so hard, that we see. What we're doing wrong, we have a very hard time seeing. So that's why it's very hard to evaluate yourself and to honestly understand, what do I deserve? Any tips on this? Because we all are human. We all have, I hope, self-love, which means we all have a hard time truly understanding if we're doing anything wrong. Anyone has acquired over the years some wisdom on how to circumvent this?
I mean, it's a common expression. Upgrade something like this, you deserve it. You know, it's like this marketing thing. You deserve it. You deserve it. I don't understand the concept at all.
Great. That's amazing. You're saying you don't have any sense of deserving more because it's not even, you're saying it's culturally not how you were raised? Or is it just you?
Well, I think culturally, I never heard that actually when I was raised, is that I deserve.
Yes, in Soviet Union, we don't deserve anything.
Okay, you were raised not deserving anything. So that was the gift and that was the education. Right. And America is a very entitled country. So there's a lot of sense of deserving. So maybe a little bit of the Americana has trickled in. The traditional answer is to get a spiritual mentor. Our sages actually tell us we should acquire for ourselves a spiritual mentor, someone who's honest, they'll tell you the truth, who knows you, who has some wisdom, and who can look at you and help you guide yourself to understand yourself. Or if you can't think of any spiritual mentor around, an honest friend might also help. Because all of us have a hard time understanding if we're doing anything wrong, because we hopefully, thank God, don't see it because of all that love. So that's one piece. But beyond the fact of properly or not properly evaluating yourself, even with a proper evaluation, it's a very common attitude of, it's coming to me. I deserve it. Maybe I deserve it because I'm really working hard and serving God. Obviously, everyone in this class is serving God. They're on this class. So you're all serving God. So for sure, I deserve it. And some people don't even think like, I'm serving God, so I deserve it. They just think that's normal. I can see a lot of people with a lot of perks, with a lot of extras, with a lot of things I don't have. And I could assume I should get that as well. That's just life. See all the time how people are dissatisfied. I remember very strongly, this made such a strong impression on me. Someone I knew had been living in a very small apartment, and she finally moved into a larger apartment. She was so happy. I was so happy for her. From a small apartment with a family, it's very difficult. I went to visit her like the day or two after she moved into this much nicer, larger apartment. And I'm sitting down with her and she's telling me unhappily how her friend just bought a house. And I felt so bad for her. Here she is. She should be rejoicing. She finally got this apartment that she truly needed. And it was so nice. And I was so grateful to God that she got it. But she was already on to the next thing because her friend had a house. So how can you rejoice in your apartment when your friend buys a house? And that is true for many of us. Maybe that was a little overt display. But for many of us, we have situations that elicit that same response. So how do we escape all this? By working on gratitude. There's gratitude, and now we're compounding gratitude with not deserved, because God is giving me so much more than I should be getting. Now we know, of course, our basic rule is God will never be indebted to us. Whatever we do for God, he always repays us more. So we always are not deserving because that's how God works. If we deserve this, he gives us this. If we deserve this, he gives us this. God says, I'm never going to be indebted to you. Whatever you give me, I'm always going to give you more back. So we always are undeserving. He gives us all day long. He gives our children. He gives our parents. He gives our grandchildren in ways I don't and maybe never will know. God is always giving. A phrase from Psalms. It's also in our prayers, discussing God to the one who does wondrous, great wonders alone. And the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, said, what's this alone? To the one who's doing these great wonders alone. Why alone? And the Baal Shem Tov said, because God does wonders all day long, but only he knows about them. It's alone. He's only privy to the wonder. The rest of us don't even realize. You don't realize that great good that happened to you was really a wonder, or that horrific thing that was supposed to happen and could have happened but didn't happen was really a wonder. So God's showering us all day long. We also say in our prayers, we could pray 3 times a day, the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei prayer, in which there's a section called Modim, which we acknowledge God for all his kindness. And we say in the prayer that every day God's doing for me miracles. Now that's true. That's prayer. That is God all day long. Not exaggeration. It's the words of prayer. So all day long, God is doing for me wonders, miracles, and kindnesses. And I'm like, why don't I have this? And so has that. And this is too small. And this is outdated. This looks a little shabby. I need, I want, I must have. And when a person is in that space, it pushes away all the goodness God wants to give us. God is desiring to give us. And conversely, the gratitude is opening up the channels for God to give more and more. Now, in the past, we've discussed that gratitude opens up the channels for God to give more and more. But now we're adding another dimension. That when I feel so grateful and feel so undeserving of all this goodness, it keeps my head straight. It keeps me from wanting more. It keeps me from chasing after more, which, as we said, both pushes away what God wants to give you. And so your needs that should be met are not going to be met. And you're not going to get what you're chasing after because God says, no, I'm not giving it to you. If I was giving it to you, you would have it. If you don't have it, at least for now, you're not supposed to get it. It's not for you. So that's a really amazing mind shift to really be able to look at our life and say, thank you. Thank you for everything you're giving me. I don't want to focus on what I don't have, what I think I'm lacking. I want to focus on what I have, and I want to feel so grateful. And when I feel that what I have is much more than I deserve, and when I feel so full with all your goodness, I'm not going to feel needy. I'm not going to feel deprived. I'm not going to feel gypped. I'm not going to feel I should be getting more. Sometimes a way puts things in perspective is when you see other people, God forbid, that are suffering or lacking in things. Because when you look at someone else and see what they're going through, it sort of realigns your brain. And you're like, oh, wow, my problems are really small. I take my problems. God, no, I was just joking before. I have no complaints. I'll stick with my problems. I'm very grateful that these are my problems and nothing else. So sometimes that sort of helps us have a perspective and realize how enormously good and blessed our life really, really, really is. So we said there were 3 points we wanted to talk about. One was evaluating ourselves. As we said, a spiritual mentor might help, a good, honest friend might help. The second point is cultivating an attitude, as we say, an attitude of gratitude, coupled with undeserved kindness. And the more we're in that space, the more we feel full, the more we feel satisfied. Our neediness just sort of like fizzles away. There was a third point. The third point, I think, might be the hardest one for us, or for most of us, to shift. And the third point is that the physical is not so important. Because the more important the physical is, the more dissatisfied a person is, the more unhappy a person is. As we said, no matter how much you have, endemic to our human wiring, you have 100, you want 200. You have the granite countertops, there's many, many other levels better than granite. What do you have only granite for? You want whatever. I forget the terms. So how do we shift? We're all born prioritizing the physical. If you weren't, amazing, but everyone else is. And then life cultivates it. And as Rivka said before, Russian life versus American life cultivates it more. So any tips? How have you freed yourself?
Change your priorities.
Priorities, exactly. How do you change your priorities?
Realize what is important in your life.
So let's say if you were realizing that was important in life, you might say people are more important than things.
Right.
That would
People-
be a nice shift in priorities. How do you get someone to change and just like, what would you do if if we prioritize things, but we know people are more important, like what should we do about it? How are we going to shift?
Care for them.
So the more I act in a way that's expressing this priority that I officially believe in, it's going to deepen and deepen and deepen it. That is very true. And that goes across this whole perspective. If you want to deprioritize the physical, care for it less, which means walk the walk that you don't really care for it. And you want to internalize, of course, your value system that we all have, but sometimes might get lost in the shuffle of life, which is prioritizing people and relationships and family and friends and God. Well, do it. Express a care and express care and express care. And the more we express care, the more we care. That is exactly how we all work. Hopefully some of you have experienced that the more you express care, the more you care. And the more you express care for physical, the more you care about it. Well, we don't want that. Well, the more you express care for people, and the more you do things for people, and the more you put people first, the more you care for people. Anyone else, any other tips you have acquired over the years? We all are in this boat together of how you shrink that striving after the physical and replace it with other better things.
When I was younger, I'm saying to myself, especially my older son, I'm thinking, I worked a lot to provide for him. And now I'm thinking, but the most thing he wanted from me is me. You know what I mean? Not the things that I was trying to work harder to provide him things. I should have given him more of my time. So now when I'm looking back, I understand that.
Yes. Yes. I think what Rivka's saying is like the trap so many parents fall into. Very true. Very true. I am sure many parents can say exactly that, but maybe they don't have Rivka's wisdom to even recognize it now. But yes, parents spend a lot of time working to give their children what they want to give their children because they love their children so much, and they don't realize that their children would rather have them, which means work less and have more mommy and more daddy and not have all the things that mommy and daddy are working so hard to give them and then not have them. Is very, very, very true. And it's painful. It's painful to look back and feel that way, but it's very true. Very true. The fact that Rivka can see it now means probably over the years she has shifted her perspective and she has shrunken, she has minimized and seen those things weren't very important anyway. Very true. Very true. Anyone else?
I agree with everything what Ellen and Rivka said. Just a little different angle. Let's say I care about something, right? And I'm worried, whatever. So what helps to think that trust Hashem, that let's say it will work out, or I'm gonna get what is good for me, right? So kind of remove the worry, or like really spending a lot of thinking about how to get it or whatever, what I need to do to get it, just to like give it a little bit to Hashem. That, so a little bit of that. It's like a different angle.
So what you're saying is, if there's something, and again, the target something might not only be a new car. A target something could be an improvement in health, an improvement in other things that are not exactly monetary, but in all of these areas, you're saying, I'm going to trust God that he's giving me what's good for me. And if I don't have whatever that target desire is, if it's good for me, I'm going to get it. God's going to give it to me. And if I don't have it now, that means for some reason, at least today, it's not good for me. So I'm just going to give it over to God. If I'm supposed to have this, I will have it. So that's sort of what you're doing, Hav, is sort of shifting that whole like, I'm going to make this happen, which of course creates that whole running after it and feeling needy and feeling gypped. And it's like, God, I trust you. You're giving me a good life. I see how much good you're giving me. And if this is part of my good life, I will get it. And if I don't get it, it's not part of my good life. That is very true. I had a crazy situation today that I'm not going to bother people hearing, but something happened and I'm like, what? And I sort of felt like Chava was saying, you know, it's so obvious the hand of God, because this could have happened and this could, you know, whatever. And I'm like, okay, God, this is your script. I'm giving it over to you. It's your script. And that sort of just is very peaceful and definitely keeps you from running anywhere after anything. If it's supposed to be, it will come to me. I will attract it. It will come in my direction. And if it's not supposed to be, that means it's probably not good for me. So that is a good way to shift from that obsession or idolatry of things. If they're good for me, I'm going to get them. If I don't have it, it's not good for me, because God loves me and he's not giving it to me right now. Again, right now, maybe later he will give it to me, because maybe later it will be good for me. But today, I don't have it. It's not good for me. That's really good. All 3 points were very practical. I know nowadays there's a whole trend, which I think is like really a secular trend. I don't know if anyone involved is really coming from a religious perspective, but the whole idea about like minimizing, you know, like getting rid of stuff, having less, having less, having less. Even the, you know, tiny house syndrome. You have a small apartment. If it doesn't have a validity, if it doesn't have a purpose, get rid of it. If it doesn't give you joy, get rid of it. Even if it does give you joy, find something to get rid of today. It's very interesting, because I do believe that a lot of people involved in this are doing it from a very secular perspective, but it really is very freeing from this whole obsession to the physical. I don't know if anyone here has ever gone down that road of just like having less, having less, having less deliberately to free yourself from stuff. But I do know, I speak to people that do it and they love it. They feel it's just so freeing, so liberating to just not be chained to a lot of things. Now, obviously, it's not only things that are part of the physical reality we could be enslaved to. A person could be idolizing under the God, so to speak, of money, which money might not be spending it. Money might be saving it. Money might be in your bank account. It could become this huge priority for you, even though, of course, it's good to manage money properly. But if it's too significant, it just takes up too much space. It chases away the other stuff. As Ellen said, the other things that are valuable in life. Or even not something like money, but let's say cleanliness or order. It's good to be clean. It's good to be orderly. But when that becomes too important, it also chases away. Just like Rivka said, a mother can think back like, oh, I wanted to give my child so much that I never really had time for my child because I was always working. A mother could say, oh, I so much value to clean, orderly home, so I never really gave space to my children because I was always trying to give them a clean and orderly home. There's all these different ways where these physical things creep into our life. And again, good people wanting to give ourselves and our spouse and our family and our children good. And sometimes it's not so good. Sometimes that stuff becomes important. And then going back to what Ellen said, The relationships are put in the back seat. So this was a 3-step process, a doable step process, I do believe, trying to really look at yourself honestly with somebody's help, trying to really focus on gratitude for how much kindness God is always showering you with, more than you ever deserve, because that's how God works. He gives all of us more than we ever deserve. And trying to minimize how important the things and physicality of this world is in our life view. You can go Ellen's Road, Rivka's, Chava's, they all were good. You can use all of these tips. And really, as we free ourselves from that slavery and feel how good our life is and how much God is constantly giving us, we can really fulfill that verse. We will have that broad mind, that good heart, and we will be happy. We will always be happy no matter what is going on.